Okay, buckle up because today we're taking a deep dive into, well, let's just say it's a bit unusual.
Oh, lay it on me.
We're going to be dissecting a Toyota Camry commercial.
All right, I'm intrigued. A car commercial, huh?
But here's the thing, our source for this deep dive claims it's packed with all these hidden symbols and messages.
Hidden messages, like subliminal advertising.
Even deeper than that, they're convinced it's all about, the Antichrist.
Whoa, okay. Now that's a twist I wasn't expecting.
Right. Our source is this audio clip. It's called, Is This the Face of the Antichrist? RA.mp3.
Catchy title.
So yeah, we're going to break down their whole argument and see how, a regular car ad could become some kind of biblical prophecy.
Sounds like a fascinating deep dive. Where do we even begin with something like this?
Well, the source's main claim is that the commercial is like a secret message about the Antichrist's rise to power.
Okay, so they're seeing this Camry commercial as, what, a sign of the end times?
Pretty much, yeah. And they point to all these specific details in the commercial as evidence. Like they start by connecting the name Camry to the Japanese word for crown.
Interesting. The crown, a symbol of authority, dominion. I see where they might be going with
Right, and then there's the car's color. It's red, which they say symbolizes war.
that. And of course, the red horse of the apocalypse from the book of Revelation.
Exactly. They even call the driver in the commercial a Nimrod figure.
Now, Nimrod, that rings a bell. Isn't he that biblical figure from Genesis, the one who built the Tower of Babel?
That's him. The source is basically saying both Nimrod and this Camry driver represent this rejection of, like, divine authority.
So defying God, choosing earthly power instead. Okay, I'm starting to see how they're building their case.
Then it gets even wilder. They claim that, like, the whole commercial's imagery is mirroring these biblical prophecies about the Antichrist establishing a counterfeit kingdom.
The Antichrist, a figure that sparked endless debate and interpretation throughout history.
Yeah, and they're suggesting this car commercial is somehow foreshadowing those end times prophecies.
It's fascinating, really. They're looking at this commercial through their specific lens of biblical prophecy and finding all these symbolic connections.
It's like they're seeing things that the rest of us just miss completely.
That's the power of symbols, isn't it? They can be so open to interpretation, often reflecting the viewer's own beliefs and biases.
Yes, totally. And speaking of symbols, let's break down some of the key ones the source identifies. They describe the driver as having a masculine feminine appearance.
Interesting. And what do they make of that?
They suggest it represents the Antichrist's androgynous nature, which they see as somehow significant.
Androgyny has often been viewed with suspicion in some religion contexts, seen as blurring boundaries, challenging established norms.
That's a really good point. Then there's this digital matrix imagery in the commercial. They say that represents a counterfeit creation.
A false reality, maybe?
Hmm.
We see this idea a lot in contemporary anxieties about technology.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the red car again. They double down, calling it the modern man's horse, a direct reference to that apocalyptic red horse.
Drawing a parallel between modern progress and the potential for destruction. I follow their logic.
They also point to this single eye symbolism, claiming it represents mind control.
Ah, yes, the Eye of Providence, a classic symbol with a long and often controversial history.
It's like they're pulling from a whole arsenal of conspiracy theory tropes.
But they're not done yet, are they? There's more symbolism to unpack.
There's plenty more. Get this. The golden dawn in the commercial is interpreted as a symbol of this new age brought about by the Antichrist. The bowing mountains, the roaring oceans, those represent his dominion over nature.
Wow, they're painting quite a vivid picture here.
They even say the seed imagery in the commercial is a representation of, like, the birthing of this new age.
It's fascinating how they weave such an elaborate narrative from these seemingly mundane images.
And the stars, even the stars get brought into it. They say they reference both the offspring of Israel and the Antichrist's cosmic arrival.
It's really an impressive feat of symbolic interpretation.
But here's the thing that keeps nagging at me. Isn't there a danger in, like, seeing symbols everywhere, especially when you're looking for evidence to support what you already believe?
Absolutely. Confirmation bias is a powerful force. We're all susceptible to it.
So how do we separate genuine insight from just seeing what we want to see?
It's a constant challenge. We have to be aware of our own biases, approach things with a critical eye, be willing to question our own assumptions.
So in this case, the source might be seeing all this because they're already convinced the Antichrist is coming, and they're looking for signs of it everywhere.
That's definitely possible. But even if their interpretation is influenced by their beliefs, it doesn't mean it's entirely wrong or without merit.
Right, it's like they're saying, hey, check out all this weird stuff. Doesn't it seem a bit off to you? Even if their conclusions are extreme, the questions they're raising about symbolism, hidden meanings, that can still be pretty thought-provoking.
Exactly. It's all about engaging with these ideas critically, questioning assumptions, and considering different perspectives.
Okay, so we've explored their claims about hidden symbols and the Antichrist, but they also connect this whole thing to this bigger idea they call dominion theology. What exactly is that?
Well, dominion theology is this idea that Christians are called to, in a way, establish dominion over all aspects of society.
Like taking control of the world.
It's a bit more nuanced than that. It's
Yeah.
about bringing biblical principles to bear on everything: government, education, the arts, as a way of preparing the world for Christ's return.
So it's not necessarily about like forceful takeover, but more about influencing society with Christian values.
Exactly. And different Christian denominations have varying interpretations of what that looks like in practice.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does this Camry commercial fit into their interpretation of dominion theology?
They see the commercial as depicting this dominion, but not by true Christians.
Oh, I see. Like it's a false dominion.
Right. They believe it's this counterfeit kingdom orchestrated by the Antichrist and his followers, not the kingdom of God.
And they even link this dominion theology to groups like the Knights Templar, Freemasons, the New Apostolic Reformation.
They see these groups as part of this larger network, working behind the scenes to manipulate world events and usher in the Antichrist's reign.
So we've got a Toyota Camry, the Antichrist, Dominion Theology, secret societies. This is getting pretty wild.
And it's about to get even wilder,
Wait, what do you mean?
because the source adds this very interesting twist to all of this. They bring the devil into the picture, but not in the way you might expect.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, according to them, the devil isn't some all-powerful being operating independently. They describe him as, get this, a predictable wind-up toy.
Hold on. So even the devil is part of God's plan.
That's the claim. And it raises all sorts of questions about good and evil, free will, the purpose of suffering.
Whoa, this is definitely some heavy stuff. We're going to need some time to unpack that one.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we'll do in the next part of our deep dive.
So stay tuned because things are about to get theological. All right, we're back. Still trying to wrap my head around this whole Toyota Camry, Antichrist, wind-up toy, devil situation. It's a lot.
It really is. We're diving deep into some pretty wild territory here.
Before we jumped into that whole devil thing, we were talking about the source's concern about something they called the divine feminine kundalini deception. Can you maybe help unpack that a bit?
Sure. The source sees this as a kind of counterfeit spirituality that's, in their view, creeping into the church. To understand their concern, we need to break down the two parts they're connecting: the divine feminine and kundalini.
Okay, let's start with the divine feminine. What exactly are we talking about here?
The divine feminine is this concept that's been around in various spiritual traditions for centuries. It generally refers to the feminine aspects of the divine, qualities like nurturing, intuition, creativity, that kind of thing.
So it's about recognizing the feminine aspects of God.
Yes, exactly. And it's seen a surge in popularity lately, especially in New Age and feminist spiritual circles. Some see it as a way to balance the traditional emphasis on God as a masculine figure.
But why does our source view this as a deception?
Well, the source seems to be concerned that this focus on the divine feminine is leading people away from, in their opinion, a true understanding of God as revealed in the Bible. They might be worried that it's diluting traditional Christian beliefs or opening the door to influences they see as incompatible with their faith.
So for them, this emphasis on the feminine is a threat to traditional Christianity.
That appears to be their position. They even connect it to the veneration of Mary in the Catholic Church, labeling her an Isis figure and linking it to ancient goddess worship.
So they're drawing a very clear line between what they consider authentic Christianity and these other spiritual influences that they see as dangerous or deceptive.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. They see a distinct separation between those two.
But is it really fair to lump all these different ideas about the divine feminine together as one big deception? I mean, there are so many different interpretations out there.
That's a great point. It's important to remember that there are many different interpretations of the divine feminine, both inside and outside of Christianity. Some people might find that it enriches their faith, while others might view it as incompatible with their beliefs. It's a complex landscape.
It's a reminder that we should avoid making sweeping generalizations and always try to understand different perspectives.
Exactly. Nuance is key when dealing with these kinds of complex topics.
Okay, going back to the commercial though. What specifically about this Camry ad is setting off alarm bells for the source?
They seem particularly bothered by what they perceive as the commercial's promotion of dominion theology. Remember, we talked about that earlier, the idea that Christians should strive to establish earthly dominion before the return of Christ.
Yeah, I remember. They see the commercial as a subtle endorsement of this idea, but not in a positive light. They even connect dominion theology with the agendas of the Freemasons, Luciferians, and Islam. It's like they're suggesting this massive conspiracy, all working towards this counterfeit utopia that eventually leads to, like, the mark of the beast and the persecution of true believers.
It's a pretty bleak outlook for sure. It speaks to this deep-seated fear of control and manipulation that often shows up in conspiracy theory.
Like there are these powerful forces pulling strings behind the scenes.
Exactly. They believe these forces are working to undermine traditional values and create a new world order that's hostile to those who don't conform to their agenda.
So they see this Camry commercial as just a tiny piece of a much bigger, much more sinister puzzle.
That's right. They see the commercial with its sleek technology, focus on individual empowerment, and futuristic aesthetic as a symbol of everything they fear.
It's like they're saying, don't fall for this shiny new world they're selling you. It's a trap.
And the trap, in their view, leads straight to the Antichrist and this great deception that will precede the true second coming of Christ.
It's a very intense worldview. And while it might sound extreme to some, it clearly resonates with a certain segment of the population, often driven by very real anxieties about the direction of society and the future of humanity.
It's easy to dismiss these ideas as outlandish, but I think it's more helpful to try to understand the fears and beliefs that fuel them. We can learn a lot by listening to these perspectives, even if we don't agree with them.
So let's dig a little deeper. What are some of the specific things in the commercial that the source points to as evidence for their claims?
Well, they really do go into great detail. For example, they focus on the car's headlights turning on, interpreting that as a symbolic representation of the mark of the beast, which in the book of Revelation is often seen as a sign of allegiance to the Antichrist.
And they see the car driving through a field of crops as the seed of this new age being sown, right?
Exactly. They're constantly looking for connections between the imagery and their understanding of biblical prophecy.
They even interpret the commercial's tagline, the start of something striking, as a reference to the Antichrist's vanity and the allure of his supposed kingdom.
It's amazing how they manage to find symbolism in just about every detail. It's like they're reading the commercial as some kind of coded message, and they're convinced they've cracked the code.
But it's important to keep in mind that this is just one interpretation, heavily influenced by their specific worldview and beliefs. It's crucial to engage with these ideas critically, to question assumptions, and consider alternative perspectives.
That's right. It's all about developing our critical thinking skills so we can navigate the complexities of information and make informed decisions about what we choose to believe and why.
We've been focusing on the source's more alarming interpretations, but there's another element to their analysis that I find intriguing. They claim that even the devil's actions are ultimately part of God's plan. We touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth exploring further.
I agree. It's a complex and controversial idea that gets to the core of some of the biggest questions in theology. The nature of good and evil, the existence of free will, and the purpose of suffering.
It's definitely heavy stuff. Are you up for diving into those theological depths?
Let's do it. I think it'll provide a fascinating contrast to the source's more fear-driven interpretations and give us a different lens to view their worldview.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of this deep dive, and honestly, I'm still processing everything we've uncovered. This Toyota Camry commercial has taken us down quite the rabbit hole.
It has been a wild ride, hasn't it? From hidden symbols to theological debates, we've explored a lot of ground.
Yeah, it's amazing how a simple car ad can spark such a complex conversation.
It really shows how our beliefs and interpretations can shape how we see the world, even in everyday things like commercials.
Before we wrap things up, I want to go back to this one idea that's been sticking with me. The sources claim that even the devil is, like, part of God's plan. That's a tough one to grasp.
It's definitely a challenging concept. Remember, they use that analogy of a predictable wind-up toy to describe the devil.
Yeah, suggesting that even though the devil might seem to be acting on his own, ultimately his actions are still part of God's will.
Right, and that those actions actually serve some greater purpose in the grand scheme of things.
So it's like even evil is part of this divine plan. But then what about free will? If the devil's choices are already laid out, what does that mean for our own freedom to choose?
That's the age-old debate, isn't it? Free will versus predestination. Some believe God has everything planned out, while others emphasize our ability to make choices and be responsible for them. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
The source seems to lean towards the predestination side, quoting a passage about Satan being used by God.
Right, and that quote gets to the heart of their argument, that even the actions of evil contribute to God's plan. They believe everything, even suffering, plays a role in this bigger picture.
I guess that's a comforting thought in some ways, knowing there's a higher purpose behind everything. But it's also kind of unsettling, isn't it? It makes you question the nature of God's justice and why we go through difficult things. If the devil's working for God, then what even is evil? And do we really have free will?
Those are some heavy questions that people have been wrestling with for a long time.
Hmm.
But I think the source's interpretation, even though it might be tough to swallow for some, offers a way to make sense of evil in a world where there's a loving and all-powerful God. It's a way to find meaning in the midst of chaos.
So where does this Toyota Camry commercial fit into all of this?
The source seems to see the commercial as this, mini version of that cosmic battle between good and evil. They believe the Antichrist's rise to power, at least how they see it in the commercial, is all part of God's plan to test humanity.
Like a divine test to see who's truly faithful.
Exactly. It's this cosmic proving ground where our choices reveal where our loyalty lies.
So even a car commercial can become this spiritual battleground.
In a way, yeah. For those who believe this, everything, even the mundane, can hold spiritual significance. It reminds us that our beliefs shape how we view the world, and even something as ordinary as a Camry commercial could become a reflection of our deepest fears and hopes.
Wow, we've covered so much in this deep dive. It's been mind-blowing, to be honest.
It really has, and it highlights how important it is to think critically, question what we believe, and be open to different perspectives. There's so much we don't know, and there are rarely simple answers.
So after hearing all this, what do you think? Is this Camry commercial just a clever ad, or is there something more going on?
That's for you to decide. We've explored one interpretation, looked at their claims, and dug into the ideas behind their worldview. But ultimately, it's up to each person to make up their own mind.
We encourage you to keep your eyes open, look for symbolism in your own life, and think about the deeper meanings behind the things you see every day. You never know what you might discover.
Sometimes the most profound insights come from the most unexpected places.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning. We'll see you next time.